So first and foremost, they never introduced themselves to me. Maybe I was not important enough, or I have no idea. They didn't care enough to do that. I can tell you what they look like. They were tall, blonde hair, blue eyed people. All of them. They're like between 7 to 9 feet. And so, as far as the way these people communicated, it was all telepathic, but mostly directives. Okay. They didn't care to get to really know you. They just said, this is what you're doing. We're trying to get the human race to evolve, and you're going to be the guy to help that happen.
Welcome to the Endless Possibilities podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds.
Now, hello and welcome to the Endless Possibilities podcast. My name is Gareth and I'm delighted to be here again, bringing you the latest episode. Today on the show, we have Michael Grubb. Let me give Michael a quick introduction. As a self-mastery practitioner, Michael has had more than 30 years of experience in honing various aspects of metaphysical knowledge and universal consciousness. Educated in Indiana University for telecommunications and political science, and well versed in combat, musical, and the fine arts, Michael pursued knowledge that extended beyond the confines of conventional thought and wisdom. This relentless pursuit of truth led to many enriching experiences, both positive and negative. Two near-death experiences, including a recent brain aneurysm, a life-changing UFO encounter, and decades of rigorous inner training. Michael now instructs a global community on how to consciously navigate reality and reconnect with innate potential. Currently, Michael teaches students in Bloomington, Indiana, as well as on the internet, who have come from various points of the globe to pursue training and knowledge within the world of the metaphysical. The philosophy is simple: love others as you would expect to be loved, and uplift your surroundings where you see it struggle. The meaning of life is evolution, and since the world is made of one consciousness, it is literally composed of the same matter, then the idea of separation is an illusion, therefore useless within a unified field of resonant harmony. Okay, Michael, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. I'm excited.
Yes, nice to see you.
Yeah, so I spent a little bit of time researching you. I watched one of your previous interviews the other day. Great story. I mean, really, yeah, incredible. I can't wait to get into it and to introduce you to the audience of this podcast. So for those who don't know who you are, can we give them a little bit of background on you and how all of this stuff started?
Okay, so really, if we were to go all the way back, we're going to go basically all the way back to my childhood, which I had people call it a near-death experience, but I was flat out dead. When you're dead, you're dead. You get brought back. That's another thing. That's what happened with me is I got brought back. So I don't know if it classifies as a NDE, so to speak, because I flatlined. I was gone. And so where that came from was one night I woke up from a crazy dream. And I remember in the dream that I was falling. And that was about the only thing that I could remember from the dream. But I kind of stumbled down the hallway and then began trying to tell my parents about the dream. So I went down the hallway, went to the room, started telling about the dream. But apparently I wasn't speaking correctly, or I was speaking some form of gibberish to them. And my mom immediately takes her hand and put it on my forehead, and she found out that I had a fever. Well, at this point, she freaks out. I'm still trying to tell the story. She ends up calling 911, and they basically tell her, well, he's got a fever. It's very high fever. More than likely, he's not going to survive on the way to the hospital, or won't survive the ambulance coming there. So you need to get his temperature down immediately. And so from that point, like, I had no idea what was going on. My dad basically drags me down the hallway. Like he grabs me and pulls me down the hallway really quick, and then takes me to the bathroom, throws me into the tub, and starts running cold water. So at that particular point, I'm like, why are you running cold water? It was like, why isn't this like our normal bath? And what occurs from that is because it isn't what I thought it was. Okay. I could hear in the kitchen my mother bustling around in there. So you could hear a bunch of commotion. You go ahead, have a seat right there. Yep. So I could hear a bunch of commotion and whatnot. And that when she's basically grabbing tons of ice that's from the freezer and she's dumping it to a bucket. So then she runs in, she grabs it to my dad, and then he starts pouring the ice in. Well, I'm in the bathtub. I don't know how long really, but my dad is reassuring me this entire time. He's not telling me what's going on. He just keeps reassuring me and telling me everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And so I'm just kind of trying my best to go with the flow, but it's not really working. I start kicking out. I start trying to fight the situation, right? And he's taking his hands and he's forced me back down. And I can still hear my mother in the kitchen doing more stuff, and she's bringing in more ice. And after a while, my dad is just holding me down and she's dumping the ice in. And so this is where things start to get kind of strange for me anyway, because I remember first I could hear my heartbeat in my ear. I could hear it just doom, 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 doom. And I'm feeling my limbs go bitter. That's about the only word that I can describe for it. It was as if all the feeling was being taken out of it, but it was being replaced with this really harsh. I mean, I guess the only term that I could think of is frostbite, but it wouldn't even be really frostbite. You know what I mean? Because I'm feeling it on the inside. And so I can hear my heart going crazy. And then all of a sudden, at a certain point, I hear it start to slow down. It's going to a lull. It's starting to go doom, doom. And I remember my vision at this point starts to narrow out. And then I start to see basically tunnel vision. And then maybe another minute. And then it was as if my light just went out like an old tube television set, just out. And so I remember going in to the blackness, and that's what it was. It was a lot of people get upset with me, especially religious people, because I'm not telling a story where angels or demons came and, fighting over my soul or whatnot. There was none of that. It was all black. And so I remember going into, I guess you would call it the void for a period of time. I was probably conscious for a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds maximum, where I was just in it. And then I remember being awakened in the hospital. So the next thing that ends up happening is I remember waking up. I couldn't have been conscious for more than 5 minutes, something like that. And I remember one of the nurses saying, "Welcome back. We almost lost you." And then I remember a male voice, which I believe was the doctor, said, "Well, technically, we did lose him for like 4 minutes," something like that.
Wow.
And so that's kind of where this whole thing started for me, because it was shortly after that I started experiencing odd things, because I didn't have nearly as many odd things before that. So when I say odd things, I'm talking like seeing apparitions or seeing spirits. That's a term that I have gotten used to not using too much, but and just starting to interact with things, intelligences that I was never interacting with before. Now, again, the whole thing with I not seeing angels or demons, I don't know if that had anything to do with the fact that maybe I wasn't supposed to die at that time, or maybe there was something else going on to where, the universe already knew I was going to some sort of a holding place for a minute. I don't know. But I can say that, like I said, a lot of religious people have actually like bitten back at me for telling this story without giving them their justification for their own religion. I don't know.
Michael, was there a belief in any of them things at that age?
Interestingly enough, yes, there was. My parents had been taking me to a place called Bethel AME, which is an African American Episcopal church. And it's a Methodist church. And so they definitely had instilled, actually, my father instilled nothing in me, but my mother was the one that was highly religious. My father is from England, and he comes from a whole different background. And then my mother is from Iowa, and my dad's white, and my mother's black. And so my mother comes from like I said, it was an African American church. So she definitely had, you know, instilled a whole lot of the religious dogma in me at that point, but I saw nothing. And so that's what I found interesting about the whole thing is a lot of times people will have experiences according to whatever religious background that they have, but zero happened, which is actually the same thing that happened to me just recently. We'll rewind backwards here in a second, but I just recently had a brain aneurysm, and that was as early or as soon as it was June 5th that I went in, and I got out June 28th, something like that. It's kind of foggy, but again, I had a very serious aneurysm. And when I say serious, it's called the subarachnoid hemorrhage through the anterior articulating artery. So that is what it's called. And so it hit my artery. It didn't hit a blood vessel, and the artery blew in my head.
Hello, I hope you are enjoying the show with Michael. This is just a request for those who don't already. If you would like to support this channel, please, please, please hit subscribe. Subscribing to us lets YouTube know that we are a worthwhile show and they push us out to new audiences through the algorithm. The bigger our audience, the bigger the guests we can have on the show, and it just helps us out tremendously. So please, 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 if you want to support us, do us a favor, hit subscribe. Maybe if you're enjoying the conversation, hit a comment down below or hit like. Thank you so much. Now back to the show with Michael. So it was a clot, was it? Some sort of had traveled into the brain?
Yeah, and it was a massive stroke, massive. So this type of stroke usually has a 60% mortality rate. And then it also, if you live through it, it tends to either paralyze you on one side of your body, or you will become a vegetable, or you lose speech patterns. And somehow I didn't have any of that happen. I
Okay.
came out pretty much just fine. I mean, I'm still a bit hazy, a little bit groggy, but I'm pretty much just fine. And the doctors ended up putting me on a paid study because they didn't understand why or how I was able to come out of this basically unfazed. And I would say unfazed, but untouched by the normal, symptoms that happen with people that have that aneurysm. And so again, aneurysm blows, I go into blackness. I don't see anything again, nothing. I'm gone. As far as I know, I'm just completely gone to the world. And then a few days later, I'm back again. So that's the thing. It's like I have yet to have those types of experiences in a near death scenario or death scenario. Now, I've had experiences like that through astral travel or lucid dreaming and things like that, but nothing to where my brain was actually just shut off. Because that was the same thing that happened with the aneurysm. Is again, it was as if I went completely out. Again, old tube television set, gone. So yeah, the whole near death experience thing when I was a child, that's what basically brought on all of the weird metaphysical stuff that I started experiencing. And then I forgot about it for a while. So, like, right at around 12 or 13 years old, when I started going through puberty, and I started thinking about girls and I started thinking about sports and I'm doing all these other things, that's when most of the metaphysical stuff stopped for
Yeah.
quite some time. I mean, it just went completely out the window. I wasn't thinking about it anymore. And I just kind of took my attention away from it. And then in my early 20s, it was like maybe 19 or 20, I started getting really interested in it again. I started getting interested in the occult, metaphysics, and I started delving into things that I probably shouldn't have been delving into. So at that time, I was working on calling out to animals, basically putting thoughts out, thought projecting, so I could control their minds to bring them to me. And then I got into the idea of entering people's dreams. Okay. But fortunately, at that time, I had a girlfriend that allowed for it. But then we started having some weird things happen. And she started getting she got disturbed because she said she didn't like the idea of me tinkering around in her head, while she was asleep, and there would be nothing she could do about it. The thing is, we started having these shared dreams. We would wake up and talk about it and everything. But then one day she was just like, yeah, this is kind of getting weird. I don't want to do it anymore. But I was still I wasn't like letting go of it. And I ended up having an experience with her. And I'm thinking, I was like, 24, 23 years old, something like that. And one night we had an argument. It was a pretty bad argument. And she was just going to sleep. I was trying to do the thing again, but then I kind of let go of it. And so I was laying on my back. I thought I was still awake. I was 100% certain I was still awake. And this whole thing was so seamless that even to this day, I still am wondering what really occurred. But I had the experience where she wakes up, climbs up on top of me, and then she starts to, do the sex act, right? And then she would do it for a little bit. And then she would look at me. She would always make this eye contact. And then she would climb right off of me and then go back to sleep. So the first time she did it, I tapped her on the shoulder and I was like, hey, what was that all about? And she was like, what was what about? And I said, well, you literally just climbed up on top and you started having sex with me and then you rolled back over. And she was like, yeah, that didn't happen. And I was like, but it did. I was there for it. So this happens again. I kind of let it go. It happens again. And then it comes a third time. So the third time that she does it, she climbs up on top of me. She starts doing it. And I grab her by her arms. And then I use a very derogatory term on her at that point. I was like, you crazy. It's like, actually, I said evil. And then she looks at me and she comes like really close, looks at me. Her eyes turn green from the hazel color. And then she goes, I'm not the one who's evil. And then immediately rolls over. And then it's like I snap out of it. I wake up and it still seems as if I had been awake the entire time. Okay. Not that I had rolled over, went to sleep, and then that happened. It seemed like everything was so seamless. I'm not for sure what transpired there. And so I get up at that point. I'm looking at her and I'm like, I'm not going to mess with her anymore because that was just too strange. I go into my bathroom and I start washing up. And I remember out of the corner, or actually right behind me in the mirror, because I'm looking in the mirror, and then I see what appears to be the briefest glimpse of a shadow that just comes right back behind me, and then the door closes in the bathroom. So at that point, and as far as I could tell, it closed all by itself. So at that point, after really reviewing what occurred there and what transpired, I was like, yeah, I'm obviously messing with the wrong stuff. Obviously, I've gone down the wrong path, because if that just happened and she's insinuating that she's not the one who's evil, which basically she's saying that it's me, and I just had a shadow move behind my back and shut the door, then there's obviously something wrong. And so I basically dropped metaphysics for about 4 or 5 years after that. So I just let it completely go. I'm not going to touch it anymore. Obviously, I'm not responsible enough to be playing with, things like this, because I was at that point seeking power. I wanted to be able to do those things. I wanted to be able to enter people's minds and alter things and play with things at will, but not for any of the right reasons, for my own selfish reasons. So I kind of bowed out of that, laid low for a little bit, and then I had my experience in 2004. So it was May 5th of 2004, and then that was the UFO experience. That's the big one. And so what happened that day was I decided to go down to a place called Leonard Springs. We were just there yesterday. Mm-hmm. And there's a path that goes down. It's a gravel road. And you take a right to get to the springs area, the springs portion. Okay, so you just kind of walk down that path. Well, as I was walking down that path and I'm getting ready to turn right to go to the springs, this is, again, May 5th of 2004. This is nighttime. And you're hearing all of the sounds of spring. Crickets, birds, all this sort of stuff. Even though birds start to die down at nighttime a little bit, they were still there. All of these sounds that are normal for that period of time. And as soon as I try to cross the threshold from the gravel road into the springs portion, everything goes dead silent. And I mean, it was so silent that it was unnerving. And so at this point, I'm freaked out. Now, I'd already told my girlfriend at that time that I was going to be going down there to meditate. I already made provisions for it. I'm already down there, but now I'm freaked out. And so I'm trying to reason with myself oh, you're not really scared. It's just this. Or it's not that it frightened you. It's just that. Because I'm still trying to tell myself that I'm some sort of a tough guy. And yeah, so I got freaked out enough to where I finally turned back around, went to my car. I drove home, got something to drink. And then I drove behind my house. There's an area called Hines Road, and there's a big winding road, and it goes up to two farmers' fields. Okay, one on the left side, one on the right side. And if you look across the field, you can see the one farmer's home. And what I thought I saw above his home was a security light. That's all I thought that I saw. I couldn't see behind it. What was interesting is I could still see the sky very well. It's kind of black, it's kind of dark out there, but you would think that if you saw something as big as what I was looking at, that there would be some sort of a silhouette, there would have been something, but no, I'm just seeing the light. So I end up driving the rest of the portion all the way around to about 50 feet in front of his house. I didn't want my car to be in front of his house because then that could cause all sorts of problems, especially the time of night that it was. One moment. Well, anyhow, I pull up to that and I'm starting to walk up and I'm still focused on this light because I was like, I had never seen the light before, but obviously it's a security light. So I'm moving up and I start to move past the first set of trees. And then that's when I notice this light start to move. So then I start listening. I don't hear anything, right? And the light, in my opinion, if you were to look at any standard night light that I guess you would see on the street, any street light, that's the size that I thought that I was looking at, but it was brighter than normal. Okay. But this thing is moving up, it comes over me, and then it shuts off that light and turns on another set of lights. And this thing at the bottom of it, it was all in a circle, but these were triangular lights that went all the way around in that circle. Okay. And then the light comes on, and now I'm looking at this thing, and I can see what I'm looking at, which is this massive, it's almost like the size of a stadium, massive egg-shaped craft. And it's not 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 feet in the air. It's like 150 to 200 feet in the air. Okay. And then I start looking at the farmers' homes because I'm trying to see if there are lights on, if anyone's going to be up, out, hearing me scream, whatever. I look and I see that there's no lights on in this home, no lights on in that home. That's when I become extremely frightened. Okay, so at this point, I'm still staring up at this thing, and then I just decide to turn and run. I try to run to my car. So it's, if you can imagine, I'm standing right here. I try to pivot to run this way, and then the next thing that happens, I lose control over my own arms and legs, and it pivots me backwards to face it again. Okay, so now I'm staring at this thing, but I am unbelievably frightened because you could feel the adrenaline going through. I felt like I was going to pee myself. I really did. And so now I'm staring up at this thing, and then I remember this weird interaction, which it felt like someone put something that was buzzing on my temple, and then I could feel the buzzing going down my neck all the way through here and down here. And so I could feel my pulse in my neck, but it was also felt like it was being simulated by whatever this buzzing sensation was. Okay. And so I'm feeling it here, I'm feeling it here, I'm feeling it in my temple. And then I start seeing a million different things, and I cannot, for the life of me, focus on one thing. It's like all these images that are flashing past at the speed of light, and I can't focus on anything. And then I become even more scared, and I tell myself to run. And then I start hearing my own voice pinging back into infinity. So if I said, run, get out of here now, do this, they'd start to overlap over each other, and then it would just sounded like garble. And so after about, I don't know, I could have been there for 15 minutes. I could have been there for an hour. I really don't know. It seemed like it lasted forever, but I'm thinking that a smart guess would be about 15 minutes. I'm just kind of staring up at this thing, and then it finally turns off the center lights that were on the bottom of it, and then a red light comes out. I think it was a laser, and then it just starts to move away as if nothing happened. So it starts to move to the northwest sky, and it's pivoting itself in, I think, quarter to half turns. So it kind of like, as it's flying off, it's just doing this thing like this, as if it's surveying the field, moves up behind these trees. And then at this point, I've got my eye on it, but I'm running to my car. Okay. And so I get into my car and then I see it go behind these trees. I don't know if it landed or not, but then I saw a bunch of white light spew out from the trees. And now I'm going around the corner back to my home. So as soon as I get home, I get into the house, I run into my room like an idiot and I grab my gun. And then I sit on my couch and I've got it cocked and everything. And it took about 5 minutes for me to realize. And I looked at the gun and I was like, these guys just froze me up against my will. They took my arms and they took my legs away from me. What is this little pea shooter going to do? And I put it down. Then I waited patiently for my girlfriend because I couldn't get to sleep that night. I waited patiently for her to wake up in the morning, and then I told her all about it. And that did not go over well. And what's interesting is 2 days before this incident happened, she was watching something on the History Channel with UFOs and abductees, and I told her to turn it off because I was a staunch skeptic at that time. Horrible. And I told her to turn it off, and she wouldn't do it. She was interested in it, and so I was just like, yeah, whatever, and I walked off. But then I have this incident 2 days later, and I'm trying to tell her about it, and then she's the one that's like the skeptic and doesn't believe. Well, this goes on for like a year. We didn't interact much. We didn't talk much. She conspired to get me thrown into a mental institution with my family. And then after a year passes, an entire year, was May 12th of 2005, they came back. And then I was able to start show people. I was able to show her. My footage even got onto the UFO Hunters at that time. It was the episode called Dark Presence. And it was really cool because I could tell people when they were going to be there. I would take people out, and then there they would be. They would just show up. And so it was a really awesome experience because there was a lot of validation there. A lot of people got to experience, because
So
for a while.
So the crafts were turning up?
Say that again?
So the crafts were turning up?
Oh yeah, every single time. Every single time. So I could like film them, they'd allow it. I'd have people there, they'd allow it, and they would be there. I've got, I think, at least 4 of those videos on my channel, and then I've got videos of the military, because the other thing is the military became involved in it for a while too. Once they started seeing that I was going out and doing this, and I was making calls and all that stuff, the next thing that happened is the black choppers started showing up in tandem. And so I've got footage of that too, where they would show up and do tight circles over my home. They would sit there and just do crisscrosses nonstop. And they were actually even showing up in SUVs for a while and parking in my backyard. And so it got a little outlandish, and my girlfriend at that time started getting extremely scared. Her name was Leonard. She started getting extremely scared, and she thought that like at some point, like either I was going to go out and not come back, or maybe the military was going to come and do something. And the military was very aggressive for a while. They would show up morning, noon, and night. They would be there at 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember one time in particular, my girlfriend woke me up in the middle of the night. She was shaking me, and I finally woke up, and she was like, they're here. The choppers are here. They're over the house. And it was 3 in the morning. You could clearly hear the house was rattling because of the choppers. And then the lights were just spewing in through the windows. And so, again, which is really stupid, I went and grabbed my gun, running down the hallway, half dressed, and I tried to run out there. Now, the thing is, at this point, the chopper was already going up and getting ready to leave. So they weren't leaving because I came out with a gun. But at that particular point, they did take off. And it was just because it took me that long to get outside. But I can tell you this, they were definitely not threatened by some dude with a 9mm, that was getting ready to shoot at their chopper. Nonetheless, but that's when things became kind of interesting, okay? Because there was a point to all of this. And what ended up happening was I started getting trained. And so with all of the UFOs that were showing up and everything else like that, because I always wondered if there was an end goal to all of this, if there was some sort of a point that was being referenced that would make any sense. And I started to experience like actual abilities. Like not just stuff where you're calling out the people in your mind or other things like that. All of a sudden, stuff like weather control, telekinesis, aerokinesis, which he's being trained on as we speak. All of those things started to manifest, and they started to manifest really strongly. And then the next thing that I knew, and I had two other, by the way, I want to always throw this in here because I think it's important. I had two friends that were being trained in this as well. One was named Kevin Huff. The other guy's name was John Tosti. John Tosti can be looked up, Tosti. He can be looked up, and he has an entire story of his own. But they were being trained by the same intelligences, and one of them, Kevin, blew his head off. The other one, John, hung himself because the training was very involved. It was very intense, caused a lot of problems.
So those were guys that you grew up with, right?
One of the guys, his name was Kevin Huff. He's the guy that I grew up with. John Tosti was the guy that was introduced to me through a guy named Lynn Taylor through MUFON. And so Lynn Taylor one day was like, I think you need to meet this guy, right? Because you and him have so much in common. And so one day he did introduce us together, and then we became instantaneous friends. And then we started having all these experiences together. But then John, the way John internalized his experiences were way different than the way that I internalized mine. At first, I thought I was being attacked by malevolent forces, which is the same thing that he thought. But then I started realizing, well, I'm not dead. They're not killing me. I'm still here. So obviously, there's a point to this. And we started experiencing these things collectively together.
So Michael, so give me some sort of idea what was happening. So when you say training, were you being trained in like astral states or lucid dreams? How was that happening? How were they communicating with you, and what were they teaching you?
All of the above. I mean, there was, okay, so I was trained in the physical many times. Okay. Like they were there with me. There were other times where they were training me in lucid dreams or in astral travels. I've had many of those things where they were, they would, the way they do things is they kind of make suggestions and then you try to fulfill that suggestion. And the training was like, for instance, I'll give you an example of one. There was one where I was out with my wife and we were out at the lake and it was frozen. The whole lake was frozen. So it was probably like 2 a.m, something like that. And you could feel it all around. Now, the thing is they would show up in the physical to me and just, like right there in front of me. And I would just train. With my wife, they made it very known that they were there, but they didn't allow her to see them. Okay. But it didn't matter because all the results were the same. She could hear them in the environment. You could feel it in the environment. And so then on that particular night, they were like, try to break the ice. And like, try to break what ice? And they're like, the ice in the lake. And so I did. I started spreading my consciousness all through the water of the lake, the frozen ice and everything. And then I started imagining it cracking and exploding. And sure enough, you started hearing what sounded like cables, like really tight cables being popped, right? Like they were being pulled to the furthest point and then they pop. And one in particular, I was able to take energy and just kind of blast it downward into the ice. And then you watch this massive crack go across the center of the lake and then it exploded almost in the center of the lake. And water actually spewed up out of it. So I don't know how deep it was, how thick that ice was, but typically the thicker the ice is, the more it's going to spew up anyway, because it's compressing all that water down. Nonetheless, so that's how they do it. They give you suggestions and then you just kind of try to fulfill those suggestions however you can. So you have to use critical thinking skills, ways of allocating your energy, and then sending it from point to point to make it work. Now, there's other times where they would put me through simulations. Okay, so I had one simulation where they would make it so I felt like I was going through the same routine over and over again. So I would wake up in the morning, get dressed, make my breakfast, actually take a shower, make my breakfast, get dressed, go to work. Okay. And as soon as I would get to work, I would clock in and I'm getting ready to drive out. And then boom, I would wake back up again. And this happened repeatedly to the point where I started getting very worried because I was very conscious each time that I was waking up. Okay. I just went through this. I just went through this. What's going on? And I started getting very worried that I was in some sort of a real life, like had I died, that sort of thing. And so finally, my solution to it, which I guess is critical thinking skills, but they were doing this too on a weekend. So it was really good that, it wasn't during the week where I could have actually missed work. But the solution ended up becoming to just not wake up for work. And then as soon as I did, I actually woke up for real. And so they would sit and put you through all sorts of simulations. There's another simulation where they're testing your pain. They made me feel as if I was on an operating table at one point and that they were just cutting me apart piece by piece. Can you handle your pain tolerance? Can you handle the pain? That sort of thing. And so I would have any number of things happen. And this is the reason why I understand why like John and Kevin did what they did, because you just didn't know when it was going to end. And
You
so
could feel like you were losing your mind, right? So
easily,
what you're explaining there, it sounds very much like a wake back to sleep, which is something that happens when people are having out of body experiences and lucid dreams. And it's happened to me before. And it's like you get up, you walk around, maybe go into the bathroom, pee, go downstairs, make your breakfast, and then all of a sudden, oh, you wake up again, and you're like, I just thought I
yeah,
woke up, and it feels like you don't even know what's reality anymore.
exactly. And the thing is, and it's so seamless too. It's so like everything in your house is the same as you,
Yeah.
you know, it, and that's what was really amazing about it. It was like I would wake up and I would see all the stuff in my room, right? I would I would go and shower. I could feel the water hitting me in the shower. I'm eating my food and I can feel that going down. And then yeah, so that's the thing. It's like you just don't know. And these simulations would go over and over and over. And it would be like one of those things where, like I said, it's either you figure it out or you're just going to stay in the simulation.
Michael, can I ask you keep saying they, right? So
Yeah.
who are they and what do they look like? How do they show up and how are they communicating?
Okay. So, first and foremost, they never introduced themselves to me. Maybe I was not important enough or I have no idea, but it was never like they came to me and said, I am Yoda from Star System, blah, blah, blah. They didn't care enough to do that. I can tell you what they look like. They were tall, blonde hair, blue eyed people. All of them. They're like between 7 to 9 feet. Yeah.
Humanoid.
And they had drones, and the drones are what we would consider to be the classic grays. They are robots. So they send the drones to come down here and collect samples or do their dirty work, the stuff that they don't want to do, right? So if you ever see a gray, more than likely it is a freaking robot. It's not a
So what? It's not got its own free will. It's not got a personality. It's just carrying out some sort of
that's it.
data collection, samples. Okay.
Got it. Yep. There is I from what I ever dealt with them, any other time I ever dealt with them, they had absolutely no personality. They were just doing work, busy bee work. Kind of like I said, they're drones, the same thing as a beehive. That's all they were doing. They're workers. And so as far as the way these people communicated, it was all telepathic, but mostly directives. Okay. They didn't care to get to really know you. Like, hey, how's it going, Michael? You know,
Male and females or
that I saw, yes.
okay.
I mean, in appearance. See, the thing is I always wondered if what I was getting was a filtered version of what they were because you don't know what really you're looking at. Our eyes only get so much information.
So
And
so that's how they were presenting themselves for you to feel comfortable with them.
possibly, yes.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of the way I always viewed it, but at the same time, I didn't really care. I mean, after I figured out that they weren't actually trying to hurt me and that they were actually trying to make me better and they were training me, I just didn't care anymore.
And,
Uh,
and Michael, who are they?
who, like I said, they never introduced themselves. They never said, I am such and such from
Is
this
it
place.
an alien race or, like people talk about Octurians and Palladians?
I would imagine they definitely had to have been an alien race because why even bother with the craft, right? So I would imagine that they were alien, but I couldn't tell you where they were from because they never ever made that clear. They just said, "This is what you're doing. We're trying to get the human race to evolve, and you're going to be the guy to help that happen. You're going to be one of the people that are going to be here teaching exactly what we're teaching you. But I was able to translate it in a way that it wasn't so vicious, you know. So when I train these guys, okay, they don't have to experience things the way that I experience. So they get it in a much nicer manner, don't you?
Yeah, it's mostly going outside and connecting and creating a positive relationship and putting unconditional love as your foremost focus.
So it's a lot different. When I train people, I found a way to take the information and the way that I was trained and then translate it in a much more soothing method of teaching. So, but I'm going to tell you, like, if I were to train them the way that I was trained, most people would wash out really quick. And so I had to learn a way to make it more approachable. And so I ended up creating a curriculum for it. I also, when people come out and they train with me, I have a kind of protocols that I work with each and every single individual person according to where they're at and what they can handle. And yeah, so that's kind of the way I do things now. But I also had a much different approach when I first started, though. I was more of a show off when I first started teaching. And then I learned how to kind of filter out the show off stuff and then just turn it into a thing where they learn all of the techniques, and then the showing off is done by them for the most part.
Okay, so you started to develop Psi abilities. So, okay, so what the teachings, like what was behind, what was the reasons these beings said, okay, we want to teach you this for what? What was the goal behind it?
Evolution, unconditional love. We are going down a really nasty path as you know, as far as the human race goes right now, and we're not getting any better. We're getting actually kind of worse. Even though violence is kind of dropping, war isn't. We also have people on the planet that, you know, I want to use the term, but YouTube. Are you on YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay, I better not use the term then. But people just don't treat each other correctly on this planet, and we're starting to really destroy the planet at a rapid race. And what they want to see is evolution. They want to see human beings evolve. Part of evolving, though, is actually learning how to operate your brain the proper way, learn how to build the parameters of your life correctly, to learn how to use, you know, the elements and nature at your disposal, but at the same time to respect it. Okay, because the thing is we kind of dump on everything. I mean, we're cutting out trees, forests at a rapid pace. One of the reasons why we're experiencing all this rising heat, there's more CO2 in the environment. Everything is getting pretty crazy, and we tend to destroy everything that we touch. Okay, so we act more like a virus than we do an organism. And so they started really looking at this and saying, if something isn't done, if there's absolutely no change into our operations, that we are on a trajectory towards self-destruction. So even if it's done bit by bit, little by little, whatever it takes, that's kind of the way they look at it.
Okay, so they started teaching you about energy, your own energy, right? So did you start to undergo like a Kundalini awakening? Did that happen during the training, or?
I'm not for sure what you would call it. I mean, I tend to stay away from real buzz terms, but if you want to look at it like that, yes, isn't the Kundalini awakening the whole thing with the serpent or whatnot that goes through the back? And okay, so I didn't experience anything with the serpent. I will just say that what it did was it altered my ability. Like I can now like literally see energy. So if you were to talk to these guys, I could point to someplace in the trees, someplace that you would never think that there was anything going on. And I'd be like, now drag your hand this way. And then all of a sudden wind starts to come through it. Right. So
Okay.
my eyes now have filters in them where I can actually see how energy operates. I can read the energy off him. I can read the energy off of you, but actually I can't do it through monitors. So this, whatever this is to my eyesight, it doesn't, your energy field will not look the same as it does if I'm looking at him right there like that.
Okay.
So, but it altered my ability to see. it altered my ability to project energy outward. So either use my energy field or to absorb energy from my environment. And I can do it with electronics. I can do it with the sun. I can do it with, every single thing that's out here is frequency based. So as long as you're within a frequency, you can use that to your advantage. And so what they did was they opened up my ability to perceive it, opened up my ability to absorb, and then to project it outward.
Okay. Okay. So what's out there, right? Is it elementals? Is there like energy beings that you can communicate that help you move this? Like, because I watched some of your videos, right? And you're moving wind, I can see the changes on the tops of water, all that kind of stuff. So what's actually happening?
It's okay. So if you think about what wind is, okay, a lot of people don't even understand how wind operates. It's just electrons colliding. Okay. So if you can take and create a pattern within the sky or the system to where electrons start to collide, okay, so oftentimes they'll, like, how many times do you watch me do a spiral and then all of a sudden all the wind just starts to come through? Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm colliding those particles together so they will smash. Okay, and then with that, boom, it creates wind. That's all wind is. So tornadoes, hurricanes, it's just a mass amount of electrons colliding together. And then you take that energy from those collisions, particle collisions, if you will, and then you reallocate them. And so that's basically what that is.
So I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is like the last airbender, right? Being able to control the elements around you, the weather. Incredible, incredible. And I mean, like people, I'll link down to your YouTube so people can go and they can watch some of the videos. You
Sure.
can see it like as clear as day.
Yes, indeed. And that's the thing. It's like we all got it. And this is the reason why I teach this, is I'm trying to show people that every single person has that ability to connect into it. What they did for me was they just opened it up and they made sure that I would be able to properly teach other people that way.
And was that something that they wanted you to do? Was it like, we'll instill or install these gifts to you for you to then go and teach others?
That basically seemed to be the exact point of it. Why they chose me. I mean, I have an idea of why they chose me, but I'm just going to say I'm a lab rat just like anybody else, right? And so I think that one lab rat is good as another. And what they did was they saw that I was out and about at that particular time of night. They had a job to do, and they're like, he'll do. So I don't think it was anything where it was so like special or anything like that.
Well, I do think that sometimes certain individuals are useful, right? Some people just don't have motivation to do anything, whereas others they have a drive. Maybe they want to share with people, they're able to communicate, maybe they have skills, running retreats, that kind of thing. Maybe
Well,
you
yeah,
had them things, them qualities.
I do have the ability to speak. I have the ability to motivate people. What would you say, Copeland?
Like you said, you can articulate well, good willpower and motivation. So you rarely leave anything on the table when it comes to putting in the effort. So and you're kind. So a lot of good things to become a teacher.
So, okay, so what starts happening to the students when they work with you, Michael? So, do they start having out of body experiences? Does paranormal stuff start happening?
I personally don't have a whole lot of like crazy dreams or lucid dreaming or astral stuff like that. But in terms of building a connection, that's a very real thing and becomes part of like one's day-to-day reality. So when you go outside or you really interact with any energy system, whether it's other people or animals or trees or just the air around you, you start noticing that your thoughts, feelings, movements all affect those things and they have an effect on you. And you start to notice the interrelationship that's a lot more like, obviously, when you're around people as a human, you notice your interrelationship. You just start noticing that there's an energetic relationship with literally everything. And it really plays into how you operate and what you want to do with your time and how you want to interact with things.
It does. Other people do experience out of body experiences. It oftentimes it will affect what you focus on. So I've got students that's what they focus on. They focus mostly on astral travel or out of body experiences, and then because they're focusing primarily on that, that's what they get the most of. I've got other ones that focus on Reiki, like Gavin.
Yeah.
Like he focuses on his ability to heal people using energy. And so not everyone experiences everything in the same way, but I can say this, when we do seminars, everything is structured to where they experience everything the same way. Okay. So if we have seminars and there's like 20 or 30 people, well, I set things up in a way to where it is very structured. Everyone sits and does and works on the same thing, and we work on it over and over and over again. And that's the other thing, is I put them through the same paces over and over and over again until they understand it, until they get it thoroughly, because there's no point in trying to take a person further when they haven't got the basics down. And it took me a long time, me personally, when I was training, to get the basics down to the point where I could be consistent. See, that's the thing. It's like, if I have a seminar, I can't afford to not be able to demonstrate. There's no room for error. I have to be able to demonstrate every single time. If I have guys that come out and they train one-on-one, I have to be able to do it consistently. And so the thing is when I first started training and doing this, I had to get things down to where it wasn't 1 in 3, 1 in 10, 1 in 5. It was 1 in 1 every single time. Because, like I said, if I have people come out and then all of a sudden I can't perform, I can't do what it is that I'm supposed to be able to teach, then what do I look like? So, yeah, it had to be a thing to when I first began, because I was not about to put myself in front of people unless I knew for 100% that I was able to activate the stuff and make it work every time.
Okay. Again, anything paranormal, anything PSI, there's a lot of skeptics around it, right? I can imagine
Sure.
that people probably say it's fraudulent, it's this and it's that. So tell me, how quickly, you working with students, do you activate these abilities in them?
I would say
Well,
immediately almost.
yeah, because the thing is anybody, first of all, being skeptical of it is the normal, healthy response. That's my
I,
response.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Oh, because the thing is, okay, if I want to go learn basketball, there's no question about it. The coach, there's a ball in front of us, we can all see it. This is physical reality, right? Now you're talking about a skill. It's very real. It's there, but now and you can't see everything that's going. And so, like Michael said, you have to have a coach that is. You want to learn basketball from somebody that can't do all the things properly. So you need somebody that can demonstrate, so that every time, because the proper skeptical mind is going to question at every single turn. And when you're trying to develop something that is evolutionary for mankind, we have all these features that we just don't use. You have all these controls that you just don't use. And it's very there, it's very real. But when you're learning to get those things turned on in any momentum whatsoever, you need that to be very obvious and palpable.
That's right. One of the things that we do is with pinwheels too. So this way you got a visual representation. So if I set a pinwheel up and then I go, it's going to start, and it goes, and I go, it's going to stop, and it stops, that's usually a good helpful tool.
This is like a little windmill, right? Little toy windmill. Okay, yeah.
Or we got big ones too. We have rather large pinwheels, and we also have the little teeny pinwheels, yard sort of things.
Yeah.
Yard. And so what we will do is, like, I will walk up to a pinwheel while it's dead and just go, and then it goes. And then I'll be like, okay, now I'm going to slow it down and stop it. Boom, it stops. And then I'll blast a bunch of wind through it, and then I'll stop it, and then I'll put varying speeds on it, that sort of thing.
Okay, so by you teaching people these things, like, is it then giving them the ability to make change within themselves? It's like, oh wow, this is real. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how that works?
Yeah. So, well, first and foremost, most people, when they come here, they're always in their heads thinking, well, he's going to be able to do it, but I don't have that. I won't be able to do it. Right. And so first you get them over the idea that they are somehow inept from being able to do it. So what ends up happening is the first thing that occurs is the wow factor. Okay. So you put them in front of the pinwheel, then I go, okay. And I create conditions that make it very easy for them to be able to access it. Okay. Because I'm going to tell you this, it's not always as easy as just walking out and doing it. Sometimes conditions have to be what's the best word for it?
Prime or optimal?
Yeah, primed. Sometimes I have to go out there and prime the situation to make sure that they're going to be able to do it. But you get the wow factor, and they sit there and go, "Is that really me?" And I'm like, "Yes, of course, that's really you. That's your energy." It's like, even though you're doing it now, you're going to have a hard time with it when you get home. You're going to have to practice up to getting these same results. But then you start informing them, okay, now if that was you and you were able to move that pinwheel, if that was you and you were able to move that wind, what does that tell you about your environment? And then the next thing is, well, the environment actually responds to my thoughts and my input. That's right. So if the environment is responding to your thoughts and input, and the weather itself is responding to your thoughts and input, that means what about your life? It means you can create the parameters of your life. If you can make the laws of nature respond to you, then that means that you actually have more control than you ever thought that you had. That in fact, the police don't have control over you, the military doesn't have control over you, the politicians of the world don't have control over you. You are autonomous, and that you have control over your own life, and you can make the parameters of your life as you see fit. But it comes down to focus, it comes down to willpower. Okay, because if you are only half in with anything in your life, okay, if you're only 50% here, 30% here, 10% there, okay, then whatever you're putting the least amount of effort into likely is not going to manifest. If you're taking 99 to 100% of your effort into something and creating those parameters of your life, like you being a podcaster now, right? That's what you decided to do. You have your show, you're putting it together. Well, that's the same thing with me. So now I have taken this, as opposed to having to go clock in on someone else's time card. This is the life that I've created.
Yeah.
Okay, being able to teach people. Now, at some point, I may even still get a job again, whatnot. Who knows? But for the last 8 years or so, this is all I've done. And so the thing is if I can take this and make a living out of it, and I can have a home, and I can keep the lights on, the air conditioning, and I've got a car just like everyone else. If I can do all that and I don't have to go clocking on someone else's time card, that lets you know that it is possible to do whatever you want to do without having to be someone else's slave. And you can build the parameters of your life as you choose. And so this is basically the whole gist to the point, is showing people that they can have the life of their choosing. And at the end of all this, when you die, okay, you can build the parameters of the next place that you go to instead of having to be recycled into the same pattern again. And so that's the whole point, is that you become not a god, okay? Because that's what is where a lot of people take this sort of thing, is that, oh, I'm a god and he's a god. Like, no, if we're all gods, none of us are gods, and vice versa. So no, it's just that you are a creator and that you can build things the way you choose as you see fit. And so the thing is if you've already got that ability, then there's no reason for you to really play with psi stuff or any sort of telekinesis or anything like that, because there's some people out there that just have a natural propensity to be able to build their lives as they choose. Okay, but that is really the whole point to this. How often do I use my psychokinetic abilities?
Oh, not very much.
Hardly ever. I only do it.
Train, you might do a quick demonstration to let us know what is trying to be done, but it's on the students for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, you do everything with your life. You know, all kinds of things. You like to drum, you like to do all kinds of things.
Yeah, I do a million different things. And see, the thing is psychokinetics was really cool and everything, and it was cool learning it, but it's not the pinnacle of my life. Okay, it's just another tool in the toolbox for me. I rarely ever use it, and the only times I really use it is when I'm teaching people. So I've learned to become extremely responsible. But when I first started all this, yeah, I was kind of crazy with it. I was a little bit of a show off.
Well, I think that is just common for a lot of people when paranormal stuff starts happening, right? Because I don't know, maybe 2007, I started having out of body experiences, and there was no quality of consciousness happening from me having out of body experiences. My ego was having something, a great story to tell other people. Oh, I went out of body, I traveled here, I traveled there.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, we still have to become better people and to grow up. Yeah.
That's the whole point to it. Because what is the point of having access to, like I always said to them, was like, if the only thing that you learn from me is how to move the wind or to play with objects, and I failed you, I have failed you completely. No, it's all about growth, because the rest of it means nothing without, people learning how to embrace one another, people learning how to treat each other well, and then learning how to help one another achieve and to get better and to move forward. That's what it's all about. It's all about the evolution.
Michael, the students that you teach, does it kind of, is there a community that kind of forms with the people?
Yep.
My best closest friends are in Duignam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is we have a forum online. It's a Facebook forum, and then we also have our website. But yeah, we have a community that's formed, and a lot of these people, they come from all over the United States, all over the world, to come together and do these seminars, and then we all kind of just hang out with each other. And at the end of the day, we have each other to talk to, because that was the one thing that sucked when I first started all this. I had my two friends that I told you about, but they're dead. And I had to create my own community in order to have people to talk to, because there was no one else outside of that. It's not like you can just run to your local grocery store, meet someone, and start talking to them about psychokinetic abilities. You just can't do it. And so we had to create a safe space for us to be able to talk and say whatever we want to be able to say to one another. And that's how we help each other move forward and get stronger. We have people who have helped heal people, between Evan and, yeah, this is what we do. We support each other. Sometimes if someone is like completely broken, they need money, we'll all come together and throw money together and help them move forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, sounds like you have a great community. And how big has the community grown over the years, Michael?
Well, that depends. So if you're looking at how many students that we have worldwide in numbers, that would be over 11,000. If you look at what's on the forum, it's under 100. It's a bit under 100. It's like 89, 90. But
a lot of people do the course and come out and learn and gain the skills they need to change their life. And then move forward.
And then they just move forward. Yeah.
And people like that, it's really hard to count. There's a lot of cases like that. And then there's the, main body students who stay highly active all the time.
Yeah. And so we've had some people that like came in, just like you said, excelled. They learned what they needed to learn, and then they built their lives, and then they just went on to do other things. Remember Davey? You remember Davey? Yeah, that dude was homeless, and now he's making 200,000 a year from the teachings.
So manifestation, it gives people the ability to manifest their own, a better version of their life,
You got it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Is there anything you feel that I haven't asked that you would like to cover, Michael?
I think we pretty much hit it all. I will say that the most important aspect to all this, regardless if you're just listening to it and you never come to us, is that unconditional love is going to be your strongest key in order to being able to navigate your reality, have good working relationships with others. And I mean unconditionally loving everyone, everything, every being, to embody that. Because other than that, you're just spinning your wheels here. This planet is made of division, and you have to be the exact opposite of what you see in order to accomplish anything.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm going to link to your website, but for just those listening, maybe do you want to just call out your website address?
Yeah.
Let people know where they can find you. It
is evolvedministry.org. So a lot of people say Evolved Ministries. It is not ministries. It's just evolvedministry.org. One word.
And you're on YouTube as well? Your Facebook?
On YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah. We got it.
I'm gonna link down below in the description anyway if you want to get in contact with Michael. You've been a fabulous guest today, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You take care.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you to the viewers and listeners. Until the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been the Endless Possibilities Podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds. Gareth is a lifelong seeker of truth, a spiritual teacher, and author, and it's his passion to delve into the profound world of consciousness. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten something from it. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, the podcast is available on YouTube and all the major podcasting platforms. Find us on Instagram at _mother_force. Take care, and we'll see you soon on the Endless Possibilities podcast.